My name is June Carter, and at 67 years old, I thought I had seen it all until Easter Sunday last year. My beautiful home, once filled with laughter and love, became a battleground when my daughter-in-law Monica threw a wine glass at me. Why? Because I refused to let her parents move into my home. The red wine dripped down my face as blood trickled from the cut on my forehead. Before I continue this story, where are you watching from? Hit that like and subscribe button while I drive myself to the emergency room. I moved into my 5-bedroom colonial-style house on Maple Avenue 32 years ago with my late husband, Thomas. We were so proud when we finally paid off the mortgage 15 years into our ownership. Thomas always said this house was our greatest investment, not just financially, but for our family. We raised our 2 children here, William and Elizabeth, and hosted countless birthday parties, graduations, and holiday gatherings within these walls. Thomas passed away 15 years ago from a sudden heart attack. At 52, I found myself a widow with a paid-off house, but also the sole responsibility of maintaining it. Many suggested I downsize, sell the house, and move into something more manageable, but I refused. This home held too many memories, and I had worked alongside Thomas to make every inch of it our own. From the kitchen we renovated ourselves to the backyard garden we planted together. Every corner told our story. After Thomas died, I threw myself into building a new life. I took accounting classes at the community college and secured a position at a local firm. Starting as an administrative assistant, I worked my way up to office manager before retiring at 65. Those years of financial independence taught me the value of self-reliance and the importance of securing my future. William, my son, now 48, always had a tendency to fall hard and fast for women. When he brought Monica home 5 years ago and announced their engagement after just 3 months of dating, I was concerned but tried to keep an open mind. Monica was 45 and had been married twice before, which raised some red flags. But William seemed happier than I had seen him in years. The wedding was small and hastily arranged. Monica took control of all the planning, barely consulting William on any decisions. I offered to help, but was politely yet firmly shut out of the process. Still, I smiled through it all and welcomed her into our family with open arms, determined to give our relationship a fair chance. At first, things between Monica and me were cordial. She would visit with William on Sundays for dinner, compliment my cooking, and ask about my volunteer work at Lincoln Memorial Hospital. I thought perhaps my initial concerns were unfounded. But slowly, I began noticing subtle changes in William. He called less frequently. When they visited, he would look to Monica before answering any of my questions, as if seeking approval. Monica's parents, Harold and Sylvia Thompson, were introduced to me about a year after the wedding. They seemed pleasant enough, if a bit reserved. Harold had retired early from his job as a bank manager due to health issues, and Sylvia had never worked outside the home. They lived in a small house about 30 miles away, and according to Monica, they had been struggling financially for years. My friend Doris Jackson, who I've known since our children attended elementary school together, warned me about Monica from the beginning. "There's something calculating about that woman," she would say during our weekly coffee dates. "The way she looks at your house, June, it's like she's mentally redecorating it already." I dismissed her concerns as overprotectiveness. Doris had always been like a sister to me, especially after Thomas died, and I appreciated her looking out for my interests, but I wanted to form my own opinions about my daughter-in-law. As months passed, I noticed Monica would occasionally make comments about my house. "It must be so lonely rattling around in this big place by yourself," or, "Think of all the cleaning you have to do for rooms you don't even use." I would smile and respond that I enjoyed having space for when family visited and that I had a cleaning service come twice a month. The truth was, I used every room in my house. One bedroom served as my home office, another as my sewing and craft room, and the others were kept ready for when Elizabeth and her family visited from Colorado. My 70th birthday was approaching, and I had been planning a celebration with friends and family. Elizabeth had promised to fly in with her husband Paul and their 3 children. I was looking forward to having my family together again, as Elizabeth's teaching job and the distance made visits infrequent. I had even booked the community center 6 months in advance and hired a local band that played all my favorite songs from the 60s and 70s. Easter has always been a special holiday in our family. Thomas and I started the tradition of hosting a big Easter dinner when the children were young, and I continued it after his passing. This past Easter, I extended invitations to William and Monica, Monica's parents, Elizabeth, and her family, though they couldn't make it until my birthday celebration, and several close friends, including Doris and her husband Frank. I spent weeks preparing, ordering a honey-baked ham from the specialty shop downtown, planning side dishes that everyone would enjoy, and decorating the house with spring flowers and Easter-themed decorations. I was genuinely looking forward to gathering everyone together, despite the underlying tensions that had been building between Monica and me. Little did I know that this Easter dinner would change everything. Easter Sunday dawned bright and clear. I woke up at 5:30, earlier than necessary, but I was too excited to sleep. This was the first holiday where Monica's parents would be joining us, and despite my reservations about how Monica had been acting lately, I wanted everything to be perfect. I put on my favorite apron, the one Thomas had given me for our 25th anniversary with World's Best Cook embroidered across the front, and set to work. The menu was ambitious but traditional. Honey-baked ham as the centerpiece, scalloped potatoes with heavy cream and 3 cheeses, green bean casserole with the crispy onions that William had loved since childhood, homemade rolls that took 3 hours to rise properly, deviled eggs with a touch of paprika, and a carrot cake with cream cheese frosting for dessert. I had spent the previous day boiling and dyeing eggs with food coloring for the traditional Easter egg hunt for the neighborhood children who would come by in the afternoon. As I prepared the deviled egg filling, my phone rang. It was Elizabeth calling from Denver. "Mom, I'm so sorry," she said, her voice crackling over the line. "Our flight's been delayed due to some mechanical issue. We're not going to make it for Easter dinner, but we'll definitely be there for your birthday next month." I felt a pang of disappointment but assured her it was fine. "Safety first, sweetheart. We'll have plenty of food when you do come for my birthday. The kids are going to love what Grandma has planned." By 11 o'clock, the house was filled with the aroma of baking and the sound of classical music playing softly from the living room speakers. I had just finished setting the dining room table with my best china, the set that had belonged to Thomas's mother, when the doorbell rang. William and Monica stood on the porch, each carrying small gifts wrapped in pastel paper. William leaned in to kiss my cheek, but Monica merely nodded, her eyes already scanning the entryway and living room beyond. "Something smells wonderful, Mom," William said, but his smile didn't quite reach his eyes. I noticed immediately that he seemed tense, his shoulders hunched slightly as if carrying an invisible weight. Monica handed me a small potted lily. "For the hostess," she said with a tight smile. "Where should we put our things?" Before I could answer, the doorbell rang again. This time it was Harold and Sylvia, Monica's parents. Harold was a tall, thin man with thinning gray hair and wire-rimmed glasses. Sylvia was short and plump, with carefully styled hair that didn't move when she turned her head. They greeted me politely but with a certain reserve that made me wonder if they were uncomfortable or if something else was going on. "Thank you for inviting us to your lovely home," Sylvia said, her eyes darting around the entryway much like her daughters had moments before. "Yes, very kind," Harold added, handing me a box of store-bought chocolates. I thanked them and invited everyone into the living room while I finished the last preparations in the kitchen. Through the pass-through window, I could see Monica leading her parents on what appeared to be a tour of my home. I thought it odd but assumed she was just being hospitable on my behalf. Then I noticed they lingered in the guest bedrooms upstairs, longer than seemed necessary, and Harold appeared to be taking measurements with his hands, approximating the dimensions of the master guest room. William came into the kitchen, reaching around me for a deviled egg from the tray I was arranging, just like when he was a little boy sneaking treats before dinner. For a moment, I saw a glimpse of my son from before Monica. "Mom," he started, his voice low. "There's something we need to discuss after dinner." Before I could ask what he meant, Monica appeared in the doorway. "William, your mother doesn't need help. Come help my dad bring in their gift from the car." William's expression changed instantly, the brief moment of connection between us evaporating as he obediently followed his wife out of the kitchen. By 1 o'clock, the other guests had arrived. My neighbors, Tom and Louise Barnett, brought their famous sweet potato casserole. Doris and Frank arrived with a bottle of expensive champagne and immediately sensed my unease. Doris pulled me aside while I was checking on the ham. "What's wrong?" "You've got that look," she whispered. "I don't know," I confessed. "Something feels off. Monica's parents are acting strange, and William seems so tense." Doris squeezed my arm. "We're here. Whatever happens, we've got your back." I nodded gratefully and returned to my hostess duties, arranging the food buffet style on the dining room table. The grandchildren from the neighborhood families played in the backyard, hunting for Easter eggs among the daffodils and tulips I had planted last fall. As everyone gathered around the table, I noticed Monica deliberately arranging the seating. She placed her parents on either side of me, with William across the table next to her. Doris frowned slightly, but took her assigned seat further down the table. The crystal glasses sparkled in the spring sunlight, streaming through the bay windows as I poured wine for the adults and sparkling cider for the children. The conversation remained polite but strained as we began passing dishes around the table. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was missing something, that there was an undercurrent to this gathering that I hadn't been privy to. The dinner progressed with the usual compliments about the food and superficial conversation about the unseasonably warm spring weather. I noticed that Harold kept glancing at Monica, who would give small nods as if they were communicating silently. William barely touched his food, pushing the scalloped potatoes around his plate like he used to do as a child when something was bothering him. After most people had finished their main course and were contemplating seconds, Monica cleared her throat loudly. The table fell silent as all eyes turned to her. "June," she began, using my first name as she always did, never Mom or even Mrs. Carter. I couldn't help but notice how empty this house feels. All these bedrooms going to waste when you're rattling around here all by yourself. I felt a chill despite the warm day. This wasn't just a passing comment. This was the beginning of something that had been planned. Harold jumped in smoothly. "We've had some unfortunate news recently. Our landlord is selling our house, and we've been given notice to vacate within 30 days. Sylvia dabbed at her eyes with a napkin. "At our age, it's so difficult to find affordable housing. The rental market is impossible these days." I nodded sympathetically but said nothing, waiting to see where this was heading. Though I already had my suspicions, Monica continued, her voice taking on a rehearsed quality. "Dad's health hasn't been great, as you know. The stress of finding a new place is really taking a toll." William finally spoke up, though he couldn't meet my eyes. "Mom, we've been talking, and we think we have a solution that could help everyone." The silence around the table was deafening. My other guests looked uncomfortable, shifting in their seats or suddenly becoming very interested in the pattern on my china. Monica leaned forward, her expression earnest but with a gleam in her eyes that sent warning signals through me. "Your house has 3 empty bedrooms, June. It makes perfect sense for Harold and Sylvia to move in with you. You'd have company, they'd have a stable place to live, and it would be a perfect arrangement for everyone." So there it was, the real purpose of this Easter gathering. Not to celebrate the holiday or spend time as a family, but to ambush me with this request in front of witnesses, thinking I would be too polite to refuse. I took a sip of my wine, buying time to formulate my response. "That's certainly a difficult situation for you both," I said to Harold and Sylvia. "Have you looked into senior living communities? There's a lovely one just outside town that several of my friends have moved into." Monica's expression hardened. "Those places are expensive and impersonal. Why would they do that when there's a perfectly good solution right here?" I set my glass down carefully. "I appreciate your concern for your parents, Monica, but I'm afraid that wouldn't work for me. I value my independence and privacy. My home is set up exactly how I like it, and while I love having visitors, I'm not looking for permanent housemates." William looked pained but remained silent. Doris caught my eye from down the table, giving me a subtle nod of support. Monica's cheeks flushed red. "That's incredibly selfish of you. You have all this space that you don't even use." "Actually, I do use all my space, I replied calmly. And even if I didn't, it's my home and my decision who lives in it. Harold joined in, his tone condescending. June, at your age, you should be thinking about having people around to help you. What if you fall? What if something happens and no one is there? I have a medical alert system, I informed him, and wonderful neighbors who check in regularly. I'm quite capable of looking after myself. Monica's voice rose. This isn't just about you. This is about family, helping family. William, tell your mother how important this is. All eyes turned to my son, who looked like he wanted to disappear into his chair. Mom, he began weakly, it would really help us out. And it would only be temporary, until they find something else. I looked at my son, truly disappointed that he would put me in this position. William, you know how hard your father and I worked for this house. It's not just a collection of empty rooms, it's my home. I'm sorry about your in-laws' situation, but moving them in with me is not the solution. Monica stood up abruptly, her chair scraping loudly against the hardwood floor. You're being selfish, she shouted. You live alone in this big house while my parents might end up homeless. You have empty bedrooms that no one ever uses. The tension in the room was palpable. The children, who had been eating at the smaller table in the kitchen, fell silent, aware that something was happening with the adults. Monica, please calm down, I said. We can discuss this another time, privately. This isn't appropriate conversation for Easter dinner with guests present. That's when it happened. Monica grabbed her wine glass, still half full of the Cabernet Sauvignon I had splurged on for the occasion, and threw it directly at me. Everything seemed to move in slow motion. I saw the glass flying toward me, the dark red liquid arcing through the air, before I felt the impact against my forehead. The glass shattered. Pain seared across my forehead as I felt warm liquid running down my face, a mixture of wine and blood. For a moment, the entire room froze in shock. No one moved or spoke. The only sound was the dripping of wine and blood onto my best tablecloth, staining the white linen with crimson drops. Then everything erupted at once. William shouted Monica's name in shock. Louise gasped and covered her mouth. Doris jumped up from her seat and rushed to my side with a napkin. Harold and Sylvia looked mortified, shrinking back in their chairs as if trying to distance themselves from their daughter's actions. Through the chaos, I remained strangely calm. Without saying a word, I stood up, took the napkin from Doris, and pressed it against my bleeding forehead. I walked steadily to the entryway closet, retrieved my purse, and picked up my car keys from the small table by the door. June, you can't drive like that, Doris said, following me. Let me take you to the hospital. I'm perfectly capable of driving myself, I replied. My voice even. Please see that everyone gets home safely. As I walked out to my car, I could hear Monica behind me, her voice now tinged with panic rather than anger. She's overreacting. It was an accident. I didn't mean to actually hit her, but it was no accident. We both knew that. And as I carefully backed out of my driveway with a napkin pressed to my bleeding head, I caught a glimpse of William standing in the doorway, looking lost and torn. In that moment, I made a decision. This would be the last time my daughter-in-law would ever disrespect me in my own home. The emergency room at Lincoln Memorial Hospital was quiet for Easter Sunday, which was fortunate for me. As I walked through the automatic doors with blood and wine still dripping down my face, the triage nurse jumped up immediately. Mrs. Carter, what happened to you? It was Sandra, a nurse who often chatted with me during my weekly volunteer shifts delivering flowers to patients. Family disagreement, I said simply. I believe I need a few stitches. Sandra rushed me into an examination room, bypassing the usual waiting period. As she cleaned the wine from my face to better assess the damage, she asked gently, "Do you want to tell me what really happened?" I sighed, wincing as the antiseptic solution stung the open wound. My daughter-in-law threw a wine glass at me during Easter dinner because I refused to let her parents move into my home. Sandra's eyes widened. That's assault, Mrs. Carter. We're required to report that to the police. I nodded. I know. and I want it reported. While waiting for the doctor, I pulled out my phone and sent a text message to Gerald Hoffman, my attorney for the past 20 years. Phase 1 is complete, I typed. Then added, emergency room at Lincoln. Monica threw a glass at me. We'll need documentation of injury for restraining order. Gerald responded immediately. On my way. Don't sign anything or give detailed statements until I arrive. Sandra returned with Dr. Patel, who examined the cut on my forehead. You'll need 6 stitches, Mrs. Carter. The glass made a clean laceration about 2 inches long, right at the hairline. You're lucky it missed your eye. Lucky indeed, I murmured. As Dr. Patel prepared the suture kit, a police officer arrived to take my statement. Officer Rodriguez was young but professional, carefully noting every detail as I explained what had happened. So the assault occurred after you refused to allow your daughter-in-law's parents to move into your home? He clarified. That's correct. She became angry, called me selfish, stood up, and deliberately threw her wine glass at my face. And there were witnesses? Yes. 8 adults, including my son, and several children, though they were in the other room when it happened. Officer Rodriguez nodded, writing in his notepad. We'll need to take photographs of your injury for evidence, if you're planning to press charges. I am, I said firmly. Just then, Gerald arrived, slightly out of breath. At 63, my attorney was still handsome in a distinguished way, with salt and pepper hair and wire-rimmed glasses that gave him an intellectual air. He had handled my late husband's estate, and had become not just my lawyer, but a trusted friend over the years. June, he said, taking in my bloodied appearance with concern. I came as soon as I got your text. Have you given your statement already? Just finishing up, Officer Rodriguez said. Are you Mrs. Carter's attorney? I am, Gerald Hoffman. They shook hands, and Gerald asked to see what had been recorded so far. While Gerald reviewed the statement, Dr. Patel numbed the area around my cut and began placing stitches. I barely felt the needle going in and out of my skin. My mind was elsewhere, processing what had happened and what would come next. Your blood pressure is a bit elevated, Dr. Patel noted as he worked. Not surprising given the circumstances, but try to stay calm. I nodded slightly, careful not to disturb his work. I'm calmer than I probably should be. After the stitches were in place, and the police had photographed my injury from multiple angles, Gerald and I moved to a private consultation room to discuss next steps. You mentioned phase 1 in your text, Gerald said. So you were expecting something like this to happen? Not exactly this, I admitted. But I've been concerned about Monica's behavior for some time. You remember our conversation last month about revising my will and setting up the living trust? Gerald nodded. You were worried about William's financial entanglements with Monica and wanted to protect your assets. Yes. I had a feeling things were building towards some kind of confrontation. Monica has been dropping hints about my house for months, commenting on how big it is for just one person. When William called last week to ask if Monica's parents could join us for Easter, something in his voice set off alarm bells. My phone buzzed repeatedly with incoming calls and texts. William's name flashed on the screen multiple times, along with messages from unknown numbers that I suspected were Monica and her parents. I silenced the phone and put it away. You've ignored 6 calls from William since we've been sitting here, Gerald observed. He made his choice when he sat silently while Monica ambushed me. I'll speak to him when I'm ready. Gerald opened his briefcase and removed some papers. Given what's happened, I think we should move forward with the restraining order immediately. We have police documentation of the assault, and with your injury, the judge will likely grant a temporary order right away. I nodded. And the trust? Already prepared according to your instructions. Once signed and notarized, your house and major assets will be held in the June Carter Living Trust. If you wish, we can include the stipulation we discussed, making William's inheritance conditional. The door opened, and Doris peeked in. There you are. I've been looking all over for you. She rushed to my side, examining my stitched forehead with concern. 6 stitches and a nasty bruise tomorrow, the nurse told me. June, I'm so sorry this happened. How did you know I was here? I asked. William called me, frantic because you weren't answering his calls. Monica is apparently having a meltdown, claiming it was all a misunderstanding and that you're blowing it out of proportion. Doris rolled her eyes. I told him I'd find you and make sure you're okay, but I didn't promise to help him smooth things over. Gerald stood and extended his hand. Gerald Hoffman, June's attorney. Doris raised an eyebrow as they shook hands. An attorney already? You weren't kidding about being prepared. Gerald and I have been working on estate planning for a few weeks now, I explained. Today's events just accelerated the timeline. What happened after I left? I asked Doris. Chaos. Monica tried to claim the glass slipped from her hand accidentally, but nobody was buying it. Tom and Louise left immediately. They were horrified. Harold and Sylvia were mumbling apologies, but still managed to suggest that if you had just been more reasonable, none of this would have happened. Doris shook her head in disgust. William is torn between defending Monica and worrying about you. He knows she crossed a line. The doctor returned with discharge instructions and a prescription for antibiotics to prevent infection. You might experience headaches for a few days, which is normal. Take acetaminophen, not aspirin or ibuprofen, as those can increase bleeding. Come back if you experience severe headache, vision changes, or if the wound shows signs of infection. Gerald helped me gather my things. You shouldn't be alone tonight with a head injury. Is there someone who can stay with you? Before I could answer, Doris jumped in. She's staying with me and Frank. Already got the guest room ready. I felt a wave of gratitude for my friend's steadfast support. I don't want to go back to my house tonight anyway. Not until I know Monica won't be there. As we walked out of the hospital, I felt lighter somehow. A plan was in motion that had actually begun weeks earlier, when I first sensed that Monica was up to something. What she didn't know was that I had been 2 steps ahead of her all along. The morning after Easter, I woke up in Doris's guest room with a throbbing headache and 6 stitches reminding me that yesterday had not been a bad dream. My phone showed 23 missed calls. 15 from William, 5 from unknown numbers, and 3 from Gerald. There were also dozens of text messages, most from William alternating between concern for me and pleas to not be too harsh on Monica. One text caught my eye. Mom, Monica feels terrible about what happened. It was the heat of the moment. Please don't do anything drastic. Call me. Another read. Mom, Officer Rodriguez came to the house last night. What's going on? Please talk to me. Doris brought me coffee and toast on a tray, along with my antibiotics. How are you feeling this morning, warrior woman? I managed a small smile, like someone threw a wine glass at my head. Gerald called the house phone looking for you. Said he couldn't reach you on your cell. He wants you to meet him at his office at 10. I nodded, wincing at the movement. Will you drive me? I don't think I should be behind the wheel with this headache. Of course. Frank's already offered to take the day off to help if needed. By 9:45, Doris and I were seated in the waiting room of Hoffman Legal Services. Gerald's receptionist, Marjorie, gasped when she saw my face. The bruising had blossomed overnight, spreading from the stitched cut down to my right eyebrow in shades of purple and blue. Mrs. Carter, Mr. Hoffman is ready for you, she said, leading us back to his office. Gerald stood as we entered, his expression grim as he took in my appearance. June, how are you feeling? I've been better, I admitted. What's the latest? The temporary restraining order was granted last night by the on-call judge. Officer Rodriguez served it to Monica around 9 p.m. She is not to come within 100 yards of you or your home. What about William? I asked. He's not included in the order. But if he brings Monica to your property, he would be helping her violate the order, which has legal consequences. Gerald laid out several documents on his desk. I've prepared everything as we discussed. The living trust documents are ready for your signature, transferring your house and major assets into the trust's protection. I've also drafted the amendment to your will with the conditional clause regarding William's inheritance. I reviewed the documents carefully. The trust would protect my assets from any potential claims by Monica or her parents. The will amendment stated that William would inherit his portion only if he was no longer married to Monica at the time of my death. Otherwise, His share would go to Elizabeth and her children. "Are you sure about this condition?" Gerald asked gently. "It's legally sound, but it puts William in a difficult position." "William put himself in this position," I said firmly. "And it can always be amended in the future if circumstances change." After signing all the documents, Gerald explained the next steps. "The assault charge has been filed with the prosecutor's office. They'll likely contact you in the next few days. The temporary restraining order is good for 2 weeks, after which we'll have a court hearing for a permanent order. Monica will have the opportunity to contest it. But with the police report and medical documentation, I don't anticipate any issues." As we finished our meeting, Gerald's phone rang. After a brief conversation, he looked at me with concern. "That was William. He's in the lobby and is asking to speak with you." I hesitated, torn between my anger at my son and my love for him. "I'll see him, but I want you present." William looked terrible when he entered the office. His clothes were rumpled as if he'd slept in them, and dark circles shadowed his eyes. When he saw my bruised face, he winced visibly. "Mom," he began, his voice cracking. "I am so sorry about what happened. Are you here on your own behalf, or as Monica's messenger?" I asked, my voice steady but cool. "My own," he said quickly. "Monica doesn't know I'm here." "Mom, I never thought she would do something like that. You have to believe me." "What I believe," I said carefully, "is that you sat silently while your wife ambushed me in my own home, in front of my friends, with a demand that I allow her parents to move in. When I refused, she became violent, and you did nothing to stop it or defend me." William hung his head. "You're right. I should have said something earlier, should have stood up to her. I was caught in the middle and handled it badly." "Caught in the middle?" I repeated incredulously. "William, I'm your mother. She physically attacked me. There is no middle." Gerald cleared his throat. "William, you should know that your mother has filed for a restraining order against Monica, which has been granted. There are also criminal assault charges pending." William's eyes widened. "Criminal charges? Mom, is that really necessary?" "It was a terrible mistake, but pressing charges will only make everything worse." "Worse for whom?" I asked. "Monica assaulted me in my own home because I wouldn't give her what she wanted. There are consequences for such actions." "She's my wife," William pleaded. "Think about what this will do to our marriage, to our family." I looked at my son, truly seeing him perhaps for the first time in years. "William, your wife has been manipulating you, and by extension, trying to manipulate me. This isn't just about one incident. This is about a pattern of behavior that culminated in violence when she didn't get her way. If you want to stand by her through that, that's your choice. But I won't pretend it didn't happen to protect your feelings or your marriage." Doris, who had remained silent until now, spoke up. "William, we've known each other since you were 10 years old. I love you like a nephew, but your mother is right. What Monica did was inexcusable, and she needs to face the consequences." William looked defeated. "What happens now?" "Now," I said, "I am going to stay with Doris until I feel safe returning to my home. I suggest you make arrangements for Monica to collect any belongings she may have at my house, as she is no longer welcome there. You may visit me, alone, once I'm settled back home, if you wish to do so respectfully." After William left, I felt emotionally drained but resolute. The next 2 weeks were a flurry of activity. Gerald arranged for a locksmith to change all the locks on my house. Doris helped me document everything of value, taking photos and creating an inventory in case Monica or her parents tried to claim anything had been gifted to them. The prosecutor's office moved forward with the assault charges, and Monica was formally arraigned 10 days after the incident. She pleaded not guilty, claiming it had been an accident and that I was exaggerating the situation to drive a wedge between her and William. Her attorney tried to paint me as a manipulative mother-in-law who couldn't let go of her adult son, but the evidence was clear. The community quickly took sides. Most of my neighbors and friends rallied around me, bringing meals to Doris's house and offering support. A few people, primarily couples who were friends with William and Monica, suggested I was overreacting. Family disagreements happen, one woman told me at the grocery store. Pressing charges seems extreme. Elizabeth flew in from Colorado as soon as she heard what had happened, leaving her husband to manage the children's school schedules. Her support meant everything to me. I always had a bad feeling about Monica, she confided as we sat on Doris's patio. The few times we met, she made these little digs about how I don't visit enough, how William has always been there for you while I moved away. I should have warned you. This isn't your fault, I assured her. And it's not even really about Monica. It's about respecting boundaries and facing consequences. 2 weeks after the incident, we appeared in court for the restraining order hearing. Monica arrived with her attorney, a sharp-looking woman in an expensive suit. William sat in the back of the courtroom, apparently unable to choose a side physically just as he was torn emotionally. The judge reviewed the evidence, including the photographs of my injury, the police report, and statements from witnesses who had been at Easter dinner. Monica's attorney argued that it was a one-time incident born out of frustration, not a pattern of behavior that warranted ongoing protection. Your Honor, Gerald countered, Mrs. Carter is a 67-year-old widow who was assaulted in her own home during a family holiday because she refused to allow her assailant's parents to move into her house. This was not a momentary loss of temper but a deliberate act of violence intended to intimidate Mrs. Carter into complying with unreasonable demands. The judge, an older woman with shrewd eyes, considered both arguments before speaking. Mrs. Wallace, she addressed Monica, the court finds sufficient evidence that you deliberately assaulted Mrs. Carter. The temporary restraining order is hereby extended for 1 year. You are to remain at least 100 yards from Mrs. Carter, her home, her volunteer workplace, and any other location where she regularly conducts business. Violation of this order will result in your immediate arrest. As we left the courthouse, I caught sight of William standing uncertainly near the entrance. Our eyes met briefly before he turned away, following Monica to their car. My heart ached for my son, but I knew I had done what was necessary to protect myself and my future. 3 weeks after the court hearing, William called and asked to meet me at the Riverside Cafe, a quiet coffee shop near the park where he had played as a child. I agreed, feeling it was time to have an honest conversation with my son. Doris drove me to the cafe, still insisting I shouldn't drive alone until my follow-up appointment with the neurologist. Call me when you're finished, she said. And remember, you don't owe him any apologies or explanations. William was already seated at a corner table when I arrived, 2 cups of coffee waiting. He stood as I approached, his expression a mixture of relief and apprehension. Mom, he said, pulling out my chair. Thank you for coming. You look better. How are you feeling? The stitches are out, I said, touching the healing scar at my hairline. The headaches are mostly gone. I'm doing well, considering. An uncomfortable silence fell between us. So much unspoken hurt and disappointment hung in the air. William finally broke the silence, his voice barely above a whisper. I've made a terrible mess of things, Mom. I don't know how to fix it. Start by telling me the truth, I suggested. How long had you and Monica been planning to ask me to take in her parents? William's shoulders slumped. She started talking about it 3 months ago. Her parents have been having financial problems for years, not just recently. The story about their landlord selling the house was true, but they've been behind on rent for months. They've burned through their retirement savings and have significant debt. And Monica thought I should solve this problem by giving them a place to live? In my house? I clarified. She said it made perfect sense, that you had empty bedrooms and they needed a place to stay, that it would save them money and give you company. He couldn't meet my eyes. She had it all planned out. They would move into the master bedroom since it has its own bathroom. You would take the smaller bedroom at the end of the hall. I nearly choked on my coffee. She expected me to give up my bedroom? In my own house? William nodded miserably. She had already promised her parents they could have it. She said at your age, you didn't need so much space, and they needed the attached bathroom because of her father's health issues. And you went along with this plan? I asked, struggling to keep my voice even. I tried to suggest alternatives, he said weakly. But Monica was insistent. She said it was the only solution that made sense financially. When I suggested they move in with us instead, she said our house was too small and that her parents needed their privacy. But I didn't need mine? I couldn't hide the hurt in my voice. I'm so sorry, Mom. I was caught between Monica's demands and my concern for you. I handled it terribly. William took a deep breath before continuing. There's more you should know. Monica has been saying things about you to our friends, suggesting that you're becoming forgetful, that you can't manage the house on your own anymore. Cold anger washed over me. She's been setting the stage to take control of my home. William nodded, shame evident on his face. Gerald called me last week. He told me about the changes to your will and the trust. I understand why you did it. It wasn't a decision I made lightly, I told him. But I needed to protect myself. There's something else, William said, his voice dropping even lower. After the restraining order was served, I started looking more closely at our finances. Monica has always handled the money, saying she was better with numbers. I discovered she has separate bank accounts I didn't know about. She's been spending thousands of dollars on online shopping, while telling me we needed to cut back on expenses. Gerald had a background check done on Monica, I said quietly. Did you know she did something similar with her previous mother-in-law? She convinced her second husband that his mother needed assisted living and helped arrange the sale of her house. The proceeds were supposed to pay for the mother's care, but much of it disappeared. William's face crumpled. I had no idea. I feel like such a fool. You're not a fool, William. You trusted someone who betrayed that trust. It happens to the best of us. Our conversation was interrupted by a commotion at the cafe entrance. Monica stood there, scanning the room until her eyes locked on our table. Her face contorted with anger as she marched toward us. I knew it, she shouted, drawing the attention of everyone in the cafe. I knew you'd go running to Mommy behind my back. William stood up. Monica, you're not supposed to be here. The restraining order. I don't care about any restraining order, she snapped. I'm not going to let her turn you against me. She's been trying to control you our entire marriage. I remained seated, keeping my voice calm. Monica, you are currently violating a court order. I suggest you leave before someone calls the police. Don't you dare threaten me, you manipulative old woman. Monica's face was red with fury. You think you're so clever with your Victim Act and your restraining orders. William, we're leaving. Now. William didn't move. No, Monica. I'm talking with my mother. You need to leave before you make things worse for yourself. Monica looked stunned at his refusal. What has she been telling you? Whatever it is, she's lying. She's always hated me, always tried to come between us. The only person coming between us is you, William said firmly. I know about the secret bank accounts. I know about what happened with your ex-husband's mother. I know you promised your parents they could have my mother's bedroom without even discussing it with me first. The cafe had gone silent, everyone watching the drama unfold. The manager approached cautiously. Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to leave. Monica ignored him, her attention fixed on William. So this is how it's going to be? You're choosing her over me? Your wife? I'm choosing the truth, William replied. And the truth is, you assaulted my mother because she wouldn't give you what you wanted. You've been manipulating me, lying to me, and now you're violating a restraining order in public. Please leave before I call the police myself. Monica's expression shifted from rage to calculation. William, baby, let's talk about this at home. She's twisting everything, can't you see that? The manager had his phone out. I've called the police. They're on their way. Monica turned on me then, her voice venomous. This isn't over, June. You think you've won, but you haven't. William will see through your manipulations eventually. I met her gaze steadily. The only thing William is seeing through is you, Monica. 2 police officers arrived minutes later. After verifying the restraining order was active, they escorted Monica outside. Through the window, I could see her gesturing wildly, apparently trying to explain her version of events to the unimpressed officers. William sat back down, his hands shaking. I'm so sorry you had to go through that. Again. It's not your fault, I told him, reaching across the table to squeeze his hand. But I think it's time you seriously consider what kind of future you want and whether Monica should be part of it." He nodded slowly. "I've already been thinking about it. I've consulted a divorce attorney. After seeing her behavior today, I'm certain it's the right decision." Monica was arrested for violating the restraining order. William drove me back to Doris's house, where I was still staying until I felt ready to return to my own home. As we pulled into the driveway, he turned to me. "Mom, I know I don't deserve your forgiveness yet, but I want you to know I'm going to make things right. Starting with standing by you instead of someone who would hurt you." I hugged my son, feeling the first genuine hope for our relationship that I'd had in years. "That's all I've ever wanted, William. For you to be happy and true to yourself." As he drove away, I realized that sometimes the most painful experiences can lead to the most necessary changes. Monica had thrown a wine glass at me, but in doing so, she had shattered the illusion that had been blinding my son for years. 6 months after the fateful Easter dinner, I hosted a small gathering in my home. The autumn leaves had turned the view from my living room windows into a canvas of reds and golds, and the aroma of apple cider simmering on the stove filled the house with warmth and comfort. The scar on my forehead had faded to a thin, white line, barely visible unless you knew to look for it. The emotional scars had taken longer to heal, but like the physical mark, they too had faded with time and care. William arrived early to help me set up, carrying a bouquet of my favorite yellow roses. His divorce from Monica had been finalized the previous month. A surprisingly straightforward process once Monica realized that the prenuptial agreement William had insisted upon, at my suggestion, was ironclad. With no claim to his assets or mine, she had eventually accepted a modest settlement. "The house looks beautiful, Mom," he said as he arranged the flowers in a crystal vase. "It feels like home again." I smiled, remembering how empty the house had felt during the weeks I'd stayed with Doris, afraid to return to my own space. "It took some time, but yes, it feels like mine again." The criminal case against Monica had concluded with a plea agreement. She accepted a misdemeanor assault charge, 12 months probation, 40 hours of community service, and mandatory anger management classes. The restraining order remained in effect, giving me peace of mind that I wouldn't encounter her in the grocery store or at community events. Monica's parents had found housing with her aunt in Arizona, far from our community in New England. The last William heard, they had been telling family members that I had overreacted to a simple accident, but few believed their version of events. Elizabeth arrived with her husband Paul and their 3 children, filling the house with the noise and energy of family that I had missed so much. My 70th birthday celebration had been smaller than originally planned, but far more meaningful. Instead of the large community center event, we had gathered in my backyard with my closest friends and family for an intimate dinner under string lights. After Monica's arrest at the coffee shop, William had moved out of their shared home and into an apartment across town. The time apart had given him space to reflect on the relationship and recognize the patterns of control and manipulation that had gradually isolated him from family and friends. "You know," he told me as we prepared vegetables for the salad, "I keep thinking about what might have happened if I hadn't met you that day at the cafe. If Monica hadn't shown up and revealed her true self so completely, I think the truth would have found its way out eventually," I replied. "It usually does." One of the empty bedrooms that had caused so much conflict had been transformed into a craft room, where I taught my granddaughter Hannah how to quilt using fabric from Thomas's old shirts. Another became a proper guest room, ready for Elizabeth's family whenever they visited. The third remained William's whenever he needed it, though he had recently started seeing a kind kindergarten teacher named Laura who shared his love of hiking. My volunteer work at the hospital had expanded from delivering flowers to organizing a program that paired seniors with long-term pediatric patients, reading books, and providing companionship to children whose families couldn't visit daily. The work gave me purpose and community, surrounding me with people who valued my contributions. Doris and Frank arrived with a homemade peach cobbler, still warm from the oven. "Just like old times," Doris said as she hugged me. "Except better, because that woman isn't here giving everyone the evil eye." We laughed, our friendship strengthened by the crisis we had weathered together. When I had finally returned to my home after staying with Doris for nearly a month, she had organized a reclaiming party, where close friends helped me rearrange furniture, hang new curtains, and symbolically take back my space. As we gathered around the dining room table that evening, the same table where the wine glass had shattered against my forehead, I looked at the faces of my loved ones and felt profound gratitude. The beautiful china that had been stained with wine and blood had been carefully cleaned and now held a feast celebrating not just our reunion, but our resilience. "Before we eat," I said, raising my water glass, "I want to thank all of you for your support during what has been a challenging year. I've learned so much about standing up for myself, about the importance of boundaries, and about the true meaning of family." William raised his glass. "To Mom, the strongest woman I know, thank you for not giving up on me, even when I didn't deserve your patience." As the meal progressed and conversation flowed, I reflected on the journey of the past 6 months. The incident that had seemed so traumatic had ultimately led to healing and growth. William was happier and more himself than he had been in years. Elizabeth visited more frequently, and I had discovered a strength in myself that I hadn't known existed. After dinner, as everyone moved to the living room for coffee and dessert, I found a quiet moment to look at old family photographs on the mantelpiece. Thomas smiling with baby William on his shoulders, Elizabeth's high school graduation, William and me at Thomas's funeral, supporting each other through grief. Life had a way of coming full circle. The pain that Monica had caused by throwing that wine glass had ultimately freed William from a toxic relationship and brought our family closer together. I touched the small scar on my forehead, a permanent reminder that sometimes we need to be broken open to let the light in. Have you ever had to stand up to someone who crossed your boundaries? How did you find the strength to protect yourself and those you love? Share your stories in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please hit that like button, subscribe to hear more of my experiences, and share with someone who might need to be reminded of their own inner strength. Thank you for listening. And remember that it's never too late to reclaim your power and your peace.